The Premier League is back. Manchester United get their season underway later today against Arsenal at Old Trafford, but I just wanted to look ahead to the season as a whole and do a little preview and talk about the positives that I can see going into the new season. Obviously, looking back at the pre-season tour, the summer series in America, I think there was a lot of positives. Yes, there was still some moments where we just looked like the same old United, but there was large periods of most of the games where we looked a lot better in possession and out of possession. Obviously, with the addition of Matthias Cunha, Brian Mbeumo, and now Benjamin Sesko, I think we've completely transformed our forward line. And while it doesn't guarantee success, it's definitely a massive improvement on what our striking options were last season. Last season, obviously we know the struggles that we had. We only scored 44 goals in the entire season. And I think Matthias Cunha and Brian Mbeumo, between them on their own, scored something in the region of 38 goals. Just the two of them. So there's a massive improvement. Yes, there's no guarantee they're going to hit those levels at United, but I'm confident that there's enough quality there between the three of them to get those games over the line that we didn't last season. Those games where we were struggling to finish our chances. I think those draws that we were getting last season will turn into wins. Possibly those losses, those tight losses, could potentially turn into draws, maybe even late wins. So that's definitely a positive coming into the season. I know Sesko, as it's pronounced correctly, there's still a big question mark over him. Obviously, he's still only young, largely unproven in a big league. Scored 13 goals in the Bundesliga last season. But you're putting him up front with Matthias Cunha and Brian Mbeumo in behind him. They create chances. Not only do they score, they create chances. You add Bruno, Ahmad. You have Patrick Dorgo, who looks like a beast this coming into this season. There will be a hell of a lot more chances created this season. So I think there's going to be plenty of goals. Another thing I noticed, just kind of touching on what I mentioned there about Patrick Dorgo, there's one thing I've noticed with the players coming back for pre-season is they look lean. A lot leaner than they did coming back last season. And they look ready. Even Casemiro looks like 26, 27-year-old Casemiro again. Kobbie Mainoo has physically changed. He looks to have put on a bit of muscle. So there's definitely an improvement in fitness levels, I think, coming into the season, which is going to be massive. We've seen over the last season or two, really, how football now, not just the Premier League, more so in the Premier League, but football as a whole, you're an athlete almost first before you're a footballer. Like we got completely dominated in midfield. We got outran in so many games last season. And the fitness levels just weren't up to scratch. So players coming back, looking the way they do, I'm confident that that won't be the case this season. Yes, we're still a bit light in terms of midfield options. And obviously we heard the other day, the Carlos Baleba deal is not happening, which I'm deeply disappointed about. I was full sure it was happening. I think he is arguably the one player that would transform this team. Putting him into that midfield, sitting in front of that defence, and allowing Bruno to be almost to have kind of more of a floating role, so almost become more like an 8 as opposed to having 2 6s. You know, you allow Baleba to have that, to do that 6 role where Bruno can almost have that kind of floating 8 role, kind of do more on the ball. But look, that's not happening. Brighton adamant he's not for sale. United inquired and Brighton gave them no indication of a price at all. So United are walking away from it. He is not for sale. And I've seen stuff online, you know, fans, the online fan base criticising the club for trying to chase this up. But like they did what they did with Brian Mbeumo and with Benjamin Sesko. They went after the player first, made sure he was on board with the project, wanted to join the club, which he does. I think he's made it clear to United that he'd be up for joining and is excited by the project. But ultimately, it comes down to the club. The club don't want to sell him. We've seen it in the past, especially with Brighton. They buy in these young players, develop them, turn them from 20 million, 25 million pound players into 100, 120 million pound players. Did it with Caicedo when he went to Chelsea for 115. But they don't sell unless, Brighton don't sell their star players unless they have a replacement lined up, which they feel they don't. They have a player at the team that is an ideal replacement for Baleba if he was to leave, but they feel he's not ready. He needs another year to develop a little bit more. So, and look, Brighton they don't need to sell their best players. So obviously it's completely on them, regardless of whether the player wants to join United or not. While it's disappointing, there are other options out there. Adam Morton obviously is the other name that's kind of almost on a par with Baleba, and the fee being mentioned is slightly less than the one for Carlos Baleba, but Crystal Palace are notoriously difficult to deal with as well, so we'll wait and see. I'm hopeful that we'll get another signing done. I think we are short in that midfield area, unless Kobbie Mainoo has an outstanding season. The fact that he's come back looking that a little bit stronger, more athletic, perhaps maybe he can fill that role in the meantime until we get maybe Baleba in next season. Who knows? Time will tell, but I'm definitely positive coming into the season. The fact that we have one game a week for the majority of the season, bar cup games if there's any midweek cup games, we've no European football. While it would be fantastic for United to be playing in Europe, Champions League obviously being the preference, but while we don't have it, we need to make it count. I think having that one game a week gives the players best part 4 or 5 days to train and get ready for each match, which is going to be a game changer for us. So as it stands with the current squad we have, I think we'll finish top 8. if we can bolster the squad a little bit more, if we can get a midfield, I don't think we're going to get a new keeper. As much as me and the majority of the United fan base would love to replace Onana, I can't see it happening. There was talk of Donnarumma, but I think he's going to City, and I think his wages will be too high for us as well. We're trying to keep, we're trying to instill a kind of regimented wage structure at the club. We're trying to move on to players that have those high wages, so I couldn't see that happening. But I think midfield now is the area we need to strengthen next, because if we've transformed our forward line, if we're scoring goals, creating chances up the other end of the pitch, and we have plenty of defensive options, I'm not overly worried about our defence. Yes, Onana has a mistake in him, but if we were up the other end creating chances, scoring goals, I'm not too worried. If we can get another midfielder in, like an Adam Wharton, I could see us pushing top four. Obviously other things would have to go our way, but I could see us pushing for the top four places. But yeah, look, United kicking off their campaign this afternoon. But let me know what you think. Where do you think United will finish? It's top four possibility, or is it just top half? Obviously, look, we need to see improvements both on the pitch and in the Premier League table. But yeah, let me know what you think, and we'll catch you later.